Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So we are lineup building for week 3 of the NFL season over on Draftkings. Now keep in mind, do not take this lineup and put it in all of your contests because I'm not even sure what the lineup's going to look like yet. And you guys have to be able to build your own lineups and think for yourselves, but I'm just kind of going over my cash game roster construction process for the most part. Now, and keep in mind in cash games, we are not trying to win a tournament here. You do not get bonus points for having a sneaky low and playing cash games. You are just trying to beat half the field. The person that finishes in first place gets the same amount of money as the guy who finishes in hypothetically 500th place, depending on the size of your contest. So in cash games, you're not trying to get sneaky. You're not trying to play your own low-owned guy that you think is going to win you a tournament. Cash games, you play the smart, chalky, high floor plays for the most part. Guys in good matchups, guys in high Vegas totals, and things like that. We are not trying to be super smart in cash games. We're just trying to beat half of the field. So that's kind of the plan when I do these videos. Again, not trying to win a tournament here, just trying to see if I can build a nice, chalky, high floor lineup with some of the plays that I like the most heading into the weekend. But again, do not just copy this lineup in all of your contests. You got to make your own lineups. I'm just kind of going over a process that I like to do for cash games for the most part. But anyway, before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, you might as well hit that subscribe button. And we're all season long trying to help you guys become better NFL DFS players that cover other sports as well. So if you're going to keep coming back to the channel each and every single day or each and every single week, you might as well hit that subscribe button and turn that notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new videos. And also, if you want to check out some NASCAR DFS content, I will be going live tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you want to come in, check that out and ask me some questions about NASCAR DFS if you happen to play it tonight. So check that out if you want. But I think I pretty much covered that. If you want to follow me on social media, my handle is in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And if you want some more content over on Patreon, always much appreciated. We got around 300 members. You can hop into the Discord chat, ask me questions, and just chat it up with everybody else in there. It's always a good time in Discord. And you get access into my entire NFL DFS data sheet, which I do preview for you guys on my final thoughts and my first look video each and every single week. So if you're interested in that, links down below. If not, I get it. That's fine. Let's just dive into today's video. So we'll start with the quarterback position, and I'm not going to go like straight down the list here of like QB, RBR, or RBR, RB, wide receiver. I'm going to fill in the guys I like the most, and then we'll see who fits at the end. Because again, I have not pre-built this lineup. I'm just going to go in here with the mindset of my favorite guys that I think are going to be really strong cash game plays on this slate. So lots of good quarterbacks today, or this weekend, I should say. Russell Wilson, excellent spot. Dak Prescott, excellent spot. This game's got a 57 point over under, which is the highest I've seen in quite some time, maybe the highest I've ever seen. Josh Allen, not really looking to play him in cash games versus Los Angeles. Kyler Murray, though, that's the guy I have a ton of interest in. He is my QB1 on this slate, and he's the quarterback I feel probably the most comfortable with in cash games. I'd also expect him to be the highest owned quarterback as well. His price, they come up about $700 since his last start, but it's deservedly so. He should probably be right around where Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott are. I mean, it would not surprise me if he ends up being the highest priced quarterback, maybe besides Lamar Jackson by the end of the year. But I like Kyler Murray quite a bit. You get that rushing upside with him. He's on a good offense. They play at a fast pace. And if you think that 57 point over-under is pretty good, I mean, this game's got, I believe, a 55.5 point over-under, which is, I mean, right there with them. And the Cardinals also have a 30.5 implied team total, which is only behind the Seattle Seahawks on this slate. So a lot of points are going to be scored here for the Arizona Cardinals, and I definitely want pieces of it. And this offense is pretty concentrated for the most part. You know where the points are going to come from. You got DeAndre Hopkins, you got Kyler Murray, and then you got KENYAN Drake. Yeah, there you can sprinkle in a couple of other guys, and with Christian Kirk being out, that kind of just concentrates it even more, even though he wasn't really getting a ton of targets. But Kyler Murray, he's my QB1 here. He's running the ball quite a bit. He had 13 rushing attempts in his first game for 91 yards and a touchdown. Then week 2 versus Washington, 8 carries, 67 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. He's going to be a threat on the ground. You're kind of getting RB2 or a little bit RB1 numbers here, and you get a fine quarterback through the air as well. He's throwing the ball quite a bit, 40 passing attempts and 38 passing attempts, so should get about 50 opportunities here from Kyler Murray, and I think he's in an excellent spot. Detroit's a team that's going to struggle defensively this season. They are 24th DVA versus the pass so far and allowing around 24 Draftkings points per game. So Kyler Murray, he's the guy I'm going to be plugging in cash games. I think he just makes too much sense here. Our Dak Prescott and Russell Wilson are in very good spots as well. Yes, but I can save a little bit of money with Kyler Murray, and I think, honestly, he could outscore both of those guys at a cheaper price point. So love Kyler Murray, and that's where I'm going to go at quarterback this week. All right, now we'll move on to the running backs. Now, there's some good spend-up options at running back. We got Zeke Elliott, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook. But the guy I like the most, I guess, is going to be, I say up top, but because he's not kind of like in the Zeke tier. But Jonathan Taylor is a little expensive at $7,000, but I honestly think he's still a bit underpriced. Last week at $5,700, that's just a free play for the most part. At 7,000, though, I still think he's in a pretty good spot here versus the New York Jets. The Indianapolis Colts are about 11-point favorites at home, and they have a huge run blocking advantage matchup here according to PFF this weekend in the trenches. And also Jonathan Taylor, he's very talented. He's got a great offensive line. Vegas, 11-point favorite at home. That's going to equal a run-heavy game script. Now, the only concern I would have is if Jordan Wilkins ends up getting more touches in the fourth quarter like we saw last week, which kind of limited Jonathan Taylor's ceiling. But assuming he gets around 20-plus touches here and a little bit of work in the passing game, Jonathan Taylor should be one of the best options at running back this week. We know the floor is there if we're looking at what he did last week in terms of volume. He had 26 rushing attempts for 101 yards, found the end zone, had 2 targets for 2 catches and 9 yards, toward 22 fantasy points. The Jets have given up 170 rushing yards per game so far. They got killed last week by Raheem Mostert on the first play of the game, and the other running backs did fine as well. And Jonathan Taylor, super talented, so I think he's a pretty safe option in cash games. We know he's going to get 20-plus touches here. It's a good matchup versus the Jets, and he pretty much checks each and every single box. So I think plugging him in as your RB1 is probably a pretty safe way to go. I have no issues at all with Elliott, but I do prefer the passing game options in there. And then Derrick Henry, I think he's a better GPP play than he is cash game play this weekend. Now, looking for an RB2, I'm kind of set on 3 running backs this week. I'm going to have a hard time not playing these 3 running backs in cash games. You can make a case for Devin Singletary with Zach Moss out, but I don't think I'm really going to go there in cash games. Do I think it's the worst play in the world? Not at all, but I'm just really kind of locked in on these 3 running backs I'm going to plug in. So from RB2, I like Miles Sanders. I'm kind of expecting him to be the highest owned player on the entire slate. So if you want to get different in tournaments, I get it, but in cash games, I think you just kind of take the free. I hate saying our guy's a free score at 6,400, but I feel like he should be a lot more expensive than this. It's a really good matchup versus Cincy. They have been getting killed on the ground so far, especially last week when Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt just absolutely destroyed them for over 200 yards and quite a few touchdowns. And Sanders, he looked good last week in his first game. He had 20 rushing attempts for 95 yards. That's a 4.8 yards per carry. He also had 7 targets, only caught 3 of them, but he's going to be able to the passing game as well. I do like the Eagles offense as a whole. I think Carson Wentz, Deshaun Jackson, Miles Sanders, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert are all interesting on this slate. So I like Miles Sanders quite a bit. They're decent favorites at home here, and Cincinnati's defense just looks like it's not going to be that good once again. So I think plugging in Miles Sanders, I think he's pretty much the easiest cash game play in this slate. And if you want to get different in tournaments, like I said, whatever. But in cash games, you kind of just take the safe, solid place for the most part. So if Sanders sucks, it probably won't matter too much because he's going to be so high owned. But if he sucks and you fade him in tournaments, yeah, you're going to be looking pretty good. But overall, I think he's one of the best plays on the entire board here. Definitely grades out very, very well for me. So I'm going to plug in Sanders as my RB2. And instead of going right to wide receiver, I'm going to plug in my flex option because I know I want to go 3 running backs this weekend because there's just so many good running back plays. Zeke, Henry, Taylor, Sanders, even Singletary, Kenyan Drake, and then a couple of other guys. But I just mentioned him. Kenyan Drake, that's going to be the guy I'm going to plug in. Now, I know it's never the greatest correlation play to plug in your running back with your quarterback, and I'm also going to probably go with DeAndre Hopkins here if I got the money. But this offense, they run at a fast pace, and they have a 30.5 implied team total. So I still think it can work out. Like last week, if you played Zeke, Dak, and one of the one of the receiving options, it still worked out just fine. There's going to be a lot of points scored here for the Cardinals. It's going to be pretty concentrated on these 3 guys. So I have no issues at all with pairing all 3 of them together, Kenyan Drake, Kyler Murray, and DeAndre Hopkins. It might not feel the greatest, but Kenyan Drake's still a capable pass-catching running back, so it's not like it's going to be terrible. So I actually don't mind it, even though it might not feel the greatest to have a running back, quarterback, and a wide receiver in the same lineup on the same team, but I'm actually kind of a fan of it this week. So if I can find Kenyan Drake, I'd love to plug him in. All right, so 6,000, we're going to plug him in at the flex, and I feel pretty good about the start to this lineup. So we got Kyler Murray, Jonathan Taylor, Miles Sanders, and Kenyan Drake. A lot of high floor guys, a lot of guys with upside, and they're all in pretty good matchups for the most part here. Now, if we're looking at Kenyan Drake's usage in the first 2 games, he saw 16 rushing attempts and 2 targets. Then the next week, he saw 2 targets and 20 rushing attempts. He hasn't really had a huge game yet, but a matchup versus Detroit is certainly something you should get pretty excited about. They've been getting killed by running backs so far, and they are currently 32nd, so dead last DVOA versus the run this season, allowing nearly 40 DraftKings points per game to the position, 176 rushing yards per game, and Aaron Jones just absolutely murdered them last week. I'm not saying Kenyan Drake's going to get like 50 points, but he should be a safe bet for 15, 20 plus points in this game. I think there's a good chance Kenyan Drake has a very huge game. He's also a home favorite as well, which does suit him well in terms of how Vegas works. So Kenyan Drake, I like him quite a bit as my RB3. So again, I feel pretty good to the start of this lineup. Now, I think we can move on to the wide receiver position. I think someone I'm pretty much just going to want to plug in for the most part is going to be DeAndre Hopkins here at 7,900. He's a bit expensive, but I'm going to have a hard time not playing him just because I like the matchup here versus Detroit. And look, no Christian Kirk. It's not like that would have mattered anyway, but this offense is going to just flow through these three guys. Like I mentioned, KENYAN, Drake, Hopkins, and Kyler Murray. Could Andy Isabella get a little bit of love? I think maybe just a little bit. I think he's fine in tournaments, but Hopkins, we know he's going to get all the volume here. He's been pretty much soaking up all the targets here for the Arizona Cardinals. And like I said, it's going to be a concentrated offense, and there's going to be a lot of points scored. And I think Hopkins has got a good chance of getting into the end zone once or twice in this game. And obviously, it's also a good pairing with Kyler Murray as well, so you get the correlation played too. But on the season, he's got a 35% target share, 73% weighted opportunity share. Not really getting the ball down the field, only an 8 out of 5.6. But this is a good matchup here versus Detroit. I'm not sure if Jeff Okudah is going to be shadowing him, but if he does, I'll take it. I know it's only a one-game sample size, but PFF had him graded as one of the worst grades I've ever seen in my life. Like, he had a grade of like 24. He got killed on multiple plays. I think he gave up over 100 yards receiving, and just overall, according to PFF, the guy looked terrible. Now, we'll cut him some slack. It was his first game, and he was, I think he was like the third pick in the actual draft. So I don't think he's going to be trash. But going up against DeAndre Hopkins, that's a tough task for even the best corners in the league. So Hopkins is obviously going to have a big advantage here. So I definitely like using DeAndre Hopkins and pairing up with Kyler Murray. And that's not a sneaky stack by any means, but it's by far my favorite stack on the entire slate. Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins. And now at this point, we only have 3,900 left per position. Now we can go a little bit cheap at defense. That'll open up a little bit of salary. And also plan on going cheaper at tight end. So it's not going to be too hard to fill in the remainder of this lineup. But I think this is a really good starting point in cash games this week. Kyler Murray, Jonathan Taylor, Miles Sanders, DeAndre Hopkins, and KENYAN Drake. All these guys are in good spots. For the most part, they have some pretty solid pricing. I mean, Hopkins is a little expensive, but it's DeAndre Hopkins. I think that's still fair. But we're definitely going to have to go value hunting a little bit. But the thing I want to do next, instead of filling out some wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s, I'm going to fill in the tight end I like the most here. And this week, that's going to be Logan Thomas here going up against the Cleveland Browns. The Browns have been a team that have really struggled versus tight ends so far. They gave up a huge game to Mark Andrews, and they also let Drew Sample and CJ Uzomah have pretty good big games versus them as well. And Logan Thomas is a guy that I think is going to be heavily targeted. Denzel Ward's going to be all over Terry McLaurin, and Denzel Ward's having a pretty good season so far. He's pretty tough on A.J. Green. And look, if they're going to struggle to go to Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas should get most of the targets here. He had 8 targets in week 1, 9 targets in week 2, and he's actually not been that bad. Not really much in the yardage department, only 37 yards and 26 yards, but look, matchup here versus Cleveland. They are 7-point dogs on the road. They should be passing the ball quite a bit, and this is a pretty beatable secondary for the most part, outside Denzel Ward. So Logan Thomas, I think he's a pretty safe, solid play at only 3,700. We're going to get near double-digit targets here, and 3,700, I will take that. And then at that point, I have 4,000 left. And I think the defense I want to plug in here is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm assuming they're going to be the highest owned defense on the slate. And I guess it's kind of like a halfway decent correlation with Miles Sanders. He's the one in the passing game, so it doesn't really matter too much, but they're also pretty decently sized home favorites here, so I'll take them at 2,800 going against Cincinnati Bengals, and that leaves us 4,700 left, so I think we could probably end up going a couple of ways here. I would like to get exposure to one of the Seahawks or Dallas Cowboys wide receivers because I want some exposure to that game. I'm pretty heavy on the Arizona Cardinals, which have the second highest team total on the slate. So I'd like to at least get a little bit of exposure to the other insane game on this slate if that pops off, which I think it'll probably pop off. So I'd like having exposure to both games. And my favorite wide receiver, I like DK Metcalf quite a bit. I also like Tyler Lockett. But if I play DK Metcalf, I think that puts me at like below 3K, which that's not possible. But I can fit in Tyler Lockett, and I believe KJ Hamler is right at the bare minimum at 3,000. So let me just plug that in really quick. But anyway, Tyler Lockett, I love this game. He's got a 57-point over-under. The Seattle Seahawks have a team total of 31 in this game. He's been fine both of his first starts, or first 2 starts, I should say. He's at 8 targets in both games, caught all 8 in week 1, caught all but 1 in week 2 in New England. Scored last week as well, 17 and 19 fantasy points. And this game should be pretty nuts. Russell Wilson's been on fire. Tyler Lockett is wide receiver 1. So yeah, I don't feel like it's a risky play by any means. I think that's pretty safe. We should get close to double-digit targets here in one of the highest scoring games of the entire week. And then with 3,000 left, I don't really like playing KJ Hamler in cash this week, but I don't hate it. I'll try to make it like a different combination of these two because if you don't want to spend up 6,400 for Tyler Lockett, there's some other good mid-range plays as well if you don't feel that comfortable going all the way down with someone like KJ Hamler, which does make me feel a little bit queasy, especially in cash games because I'm not really sure if I can trust that too much. I guess I'll have to search his name because I'm not going to be able to find him. But Anyway, KJ Hamler is the bare minimum at 3,000. Cortland Sutton's going to be out. We also know Jerry Jeudy's banged up. And the guy saw 7 targets in his first game. He only caught 3 of them, but he had 8.7 points. And if he at $3,000, I would take 8.7 points again. I think he can probably get us close to 10 points here. I'm not sure if he's going to get 7 targets again. We'll have to see how he does with Jeff Driscoll here, but I think he'll get at least 5 for the most part, and that's really not that bad. And at the bare minimum at 3,000, it's just kind of trying to let you fit in everybody else in your lineup. And if you plug him in, I don't think he's going to goose egg you either. So it actually lets you get a pretty loaded lineup for the most part. So you got Kyler Murray, Jonathan Taylor, Miles Sanders, DeAndre Hopkins, Lockett. Hamler's a little bit iffy there, but at 3,000, it's kind of just whatever. Lance Thomas, Kenyon Drake, and the Eagles defense. I actually think that's pretty solid for the most part, and it's got a lot of upside in my opinion. Also got a pretty high floor as well, because all these guys get plenty of volume. So I think that's a pretty good volume lineup, and I would definitely feel pretty solid about that in cash games. If you don't want to go the KJ Hamler route, let me see what I can work with here. And again, don't just copy this lineup. You got to make your own lineups, but I'm kind of just playing around right now on the fly. But let's see. So only 4,700 left, and if I don't want to go with KJ Hamler in cash games, I'm probably going to have to dip down here a little bit. Like, I kind of like N'Keal Harry here. I know he's questionable with the ankle injury, but I'm assuming he's going to be a full go here. So if we plug him in, he's been getting quite the volume here. I mean, 12 targets in the last game versus Seattle, 6 targets in week 1 versus Miami, 7 points and 15 points. I feel like he's a little bit too cheap here going up against the Las Vegas Raiders defense, which is probably going to struggle versus the pass this season. I believe they're 26 DVA versus the pass currently through the first 2 weeks. And that would leave us 5,200 left. And I think DeSean Jackson's like 51 or 5,200, which I would not feel bad about that in the slightest. Yeah, DeSean Jackson's 5,200. This is a pretty good matchup versus Cincy. I'm pretty sure he's 3rd in air yards this season. He's got an 8 out of 17.9. I think he's got like 260 some air yards so far. So they're targeting him down the field. He had 7 targets week 1, 9 targets week 2. And also no Jalen Reagor this week and no Alshon Jeffrey. So he's going to be the main guy here for the most part. And this is a pretty good matchup versus Cincinnati. We saw Odell Beckham Jr. get open on a couple of deep balls last week on Thursday night. So I actually think Djax is a pretty strong play here. The target's going to be there. He's going to get the ball down the field, and 5,200, I don't mind that. So if you want to plug him in, I think that's fine. I mean, you have 2 Eagles players in Miles Sanders and DeSean Jackson, but I think they're still one of the best teams to target, so I guess I wouldn't feel too bad about that. But if you don't want to go the double Eagle route, I guess you could pivot off of DeSean Jackson for someone like Corey Davis. He didn't do too much last week, but no A.J. Brown once again. He only had 5 targets, but for the first 2 weeks, he's had some decent fantasy games. He got into the end zone, which kind of saved his day. But 20 points where he saw 8 targets on 101 yards, and then 12 points where he got 5 targets last week versus Jacksonville. This is also a fantastic matchup versus the Vikings, who have been absolutely horrendous on defense so far this year. So I wouldn't even hate plugging in Corey Davis if you don't want to get 3 Eagles, including the defense, in your lineup. But I definitely think it's a pretty solid starting point in cash games this weekend. Really liking that Kyler Murray, Taylor, Sanders, Hopkins, Kenyon Drake core for the most part. But I hope this video was helpful, guys. If it was, make sure you leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really do appreciate it. Again, if you want to check out my NASCAR DFS content, I'll be going live tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern if you want to come in and check it out. But that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys in the core plays video tomorrow morning, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend.